November 2020. You pressed the power button. The PS5 loaded Spider-Man in 2 seconds. No loading screen, just instant. But that speed came from a bet nobody thought Sony could win. An SSD 110 times faster than PS4. Custom silicon that didn't exist. Game architecture that had to be rebuilt from scratch. Engineers said impossible at $499. The PS4 made $20 billion in profit by listening. The PS5 would make even more by doing what everyone said couldn't be done. This is how Sony built the fastest console ever made. Mark Cerny studied PS4. The CPU wasn't the bottleneck. The GPU wasn't the problem. Storage was killing performance. PS4's hard drive read 50 to 100 megabytes per second. Games streamed narrow corridors because loading full environments took too long. Here's the kicker. Standard SSDs wouldn't solve it. Consumer SSDs read 500 megabytes per second. Better, but still too slow. Cerny wanted 5,000, 10 times faster. The problem wasn't just speed, it was data flow. Moving data from SSD to RAM to GPU created bottlenecks at every step. Sony needed custom silicon. An I/O complex eliminating every choke point. Nobody had built this before. Sony partnered with AMD and Phison. Custom SSD controller. 825 gigabytes capacity, not 1 terabyte. Custom size optimized for 12-channel memory. Read speed, 5.5 gigabytes per second. 110 times faster than PS4, but raw speed meant nothing without removing bottlenecks. The I/O complex handled decompression. Kraken compression at 10 gigabytes per second. Hardware decompression freed the CPU completely. The GPU delivered 10.3 teraflops, 36 compute units at 2.23 gigahertz. Ray tracing hardware built into RDNA 2 architecture. But here's the wild part. The SSD mattered more than GPU specs. Loading speed changed what games could be. Manufacturing cost. APU $150. Custom SSD 90. Memory 120. Cooling 45. Total $520. Retail $499. Sony lost $21 per console, not $241 like PS3's sustainable loss. Insomniac rebuilt Spider-Man. On PS4, fast travel took 15 seconds. Narrow corridors hid loading. On PS5, 2 seconds. No hidden loading. The city loaded instantly. Ratchet and Clank rift apart. Instant dimension hopping. Different worlds loaded in under 1 second. Impossible on PS4. The SSD made it core gameplay. Fundamental game design. Horizon Forbidden West. No fast travel loading. Player could fly anywhere instantly. The SSD eliminated 30 years of workarounds. Elevators that hid loading. Narrow corridors. Slow doors. All gone. Developers stopped designing around storage limitations. November 2020. COVID-19 pandemic. Chip shortage. Supply chain chaos. Worst possible launch timing. Sony manufactured 4.5 million units for launch quarter. Every unit sold immediately. Demand, 15 million. Supply couldn't meet demand for 18 months. Scalpers bought consoles, resold for $800 to $1,000. Twice retail. But here's the thing. Demand proved the vision. Despite pandemic, despite shortages, despite scalpers. PS5 became fastest-selling PlayStation ever, 60 million units by mid-2024. Faster adoption than PS4 despite supply constraints. The custom SSD added $90 to manufacturing. Sony could have used standard SSD, saved money, launched cheaper. They didn't. The bet on impossible speed paid off. The controller wasn't an afterthought. Haptic feedback replaced rumble motors. Adaptive triggers with programmable resistance. Cost: $28 per controller, $15 more than DualShock 4. Returnal used haptics for rainfall. Each drop felt different. Adaptive triggers simulated weapon resistance. Different guns felt different, not visually, physically, in your hands. Astro's Playroom demonstrated every feature. Walking on ice felt slippery. Metal surfaces felt hard. Glass felt brittle. The controller communicated texture. Cost 90 cents for haptic motors, $10 for adaptive trigger mechanisms. Sony kept both because testing showed longer play sessions. Players noticed. Players cared. The DualSense wasn't just input device, it was output device sensory feedback that made games feel tangible. By mid-2024, 60 million PS5s sold. Fastest PlayStation adoption ever. Despite launching during pandemic, despite chip shortage, despite supply constraints lasting 18 months. Now you understand why. That 5.5 gigabytes per second SSD eliminated loading screens. That custom I/O complex removed bottlenecks. That Kraken decompression freed the CPU. That $21 loss per unit was sustainable because demand exceeded supply by 3-to-1. Spider-Man loaded in 2 seconds. Ratchet changed dimensions in 1 second. Horizon eliminated fast travel loading. 30 years of game design workarounds erased by storage speed. Developers stopped compromising. Players stopped waiting. Mark Cerny identified the bottleneck, not CPU, not GPU, storage. He built custom silicon. Nobody thought possible at console pricing. 5.5 gigabytes per second when engineers said 3 was maximum at that cost. $90 custom SSD when standard drives cost $40. The PS3 lost $4 billion betting on power nobody could use. The PS4 made $20 billion betting on simplicity developers understood. The PS5 will make more betting on speed. Everyone said was impossible. Impossible just means nobody's done it yet. Sony did it. The custom I/O complex. The 12-channel SSD. The hardware decompression. Every impossible choice validated by 60 million sales. Next time, Xbox Series X. Microsoft bet on raw power, 12 teraflops, more than PS5. But Sony bet on storage speed. 2 different strategies. 1 generation. That story is next.